in my alone time, that is who I'm bringing to the table. We can put on a
Oof.
mask for so long, we can put on a costume for so long, which is what, the misuse of polarity is. It's a mask, it's a costume, it's an archetype that's unsustainable. If at the core of us, our core transmission, beyond all the layers, beyond all the skills, is self-hatred and self-rejection, when
Mm.
all of that is stripped away and we're in a regressed place, that's where we're going to be relating from. What I've had to really come to realize is I am who I am in relationship.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Deeper Podcast. And today I'm joined by my friend Courtney McNabb. And I met Courtney actually through the teacher training at John Wyland. And the moment I met her, I was just telling her, I was like, she is special. I want her to be my friend. And we hit it off right away. And she's come to visit me in Amsterdam. And we have just such a special relationship. And we've continued our friendship actually in more polarity work. And really, I feel like we have the journeys that we're having in healing our relationship to the masculine, to ourselves, to relationship, all of that. I feel like we're kind of walking next to each other and inspiring each other as we go along. So I'm so excited to have Courtney here today because we're going to talk about something very, very important. But first, Courtney, hi, welcome.
Hi, baby.
Hi, honey. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. So I
Mm.
was I was speaking to you about it before I pressed record that um one of the things you and I have been talking about, and I think something that you and I have been feeling in our personal journeys also, is that there is a limit to all the polarity work. There is a limit to what polarity can do. And if we go into the polarity work without, and this is the key part, without bringing also the awareness of trauma, the awareness of our inner child, the healing on those pieces. If we go into the polarity work without doing that, we actually turn polarity into something really ugly and really constricted and really controlling. And so that's something I really want to talk to you about today, about how, what are the limits of polarity and why do we so much need to bring in the polarity, or sorry, the trauma work. So I'm super curious. Let's just, I have a few questions for you, of course, babe, but let's just dive right in. Maybe let's start here. What have you noticed in yourself when you were doing the polarity work without that trauma piece? What was going astray? What wasn't working?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that. The first thing I want to address is the fact that this is not anybody's fault
Mm-mm.
and that none of us are broken if we are seeking something, a modality to help us get something, i.e., the relationship or the love from the masculine
Mm.
that we want. When I first started confronting these truths, I was met with so much shame
Mm.
of my own desperation, um,
Mm.
how deep my obsession with getting something, i.e., relationship with the masculine outside of me to fill a hole.
Yeah.
And the truth is that we live in a sick and broken world. None of us are sick and broken, but our culture and our conditioning is
Mhm.
very sick and very broken and built on fantasy and built on getting something outside of ourselves to fulfill us. Our whole world is based in um, who can you be externally in order to prove your worth and value to the world.
Yeah.
And I think polarity is kind of no different if you look at the personal development industry and the marketing. And I'm guilty of this in the past, of like, if you become feminine and if your relationship becomes polarized, then you'll be happy, then you'll never have to experience pain. And
Yeah.
here's the kicker, it's like, then you won't have a shadow,
Yeah.
then you won't have unintegrated childhood wounding once you receive your king and once you
Yeah.
become a queen. And this is the great lie. This is the great lie, that when we embody the feminine, when a king claims and chooses us, we will no longer suffer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is simply, yeah, a fantasy.
Yeah, we want to be saved. We want to be saved by the king so that all our wounds are completed and we just feel safe and loved and it's all finished. Yeah, yeah. So, what did you notice in your own life? Was there something specific where you felt like, hey, I'm missing a piece or there's something I'm not addressing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first learned polarity, I swore I was like, this is the religion for me. This is the thing going to save me. And my friends will joke that knew me in this time when I was really into it, that I treated the world like a polarity practice. And, I kind of hung open like a barn door for like anyone, like I could just polarize anyone at any moment. And like my friends were like, Courtney, you might want to like cool it. Like the eye contact is like pretty intense that's going on over there.
You're just
So
getting coffee.
totally like you're polarizing the barista and they're like calm down. And I remember Kendra Kunov, who is my teacher with John, said this at the last intensive. Someone was asking about polarity and asking about her polarizing the masculine, and she got really fierce and she was like, I do not want to polarize people. That
Mm,
is not like the impact I want to leave on the world. I want to leave people feeling loved.
mm,
And this was such a mature distinction for me
mm,
between the right place for polarity
mm,
and the more right place for love
mm.
and for wholeness and for like a wholesome type of love, right? Not getting a man's dick hard when we look at him because we're so powerful in our feminine energy, which is really a shadow from most of our teenage lives. So anyway, this was my trajectory, trying to use polarity to get something, trying to
Yeah,
use polarity to get validation, trying to use polarity to become powerful. I was taught that external validation from the masculine is power. Like, that is what it is growing up. And I've had to really pick this apart as relationship after relationship. I've become more and more embodied in polarity practice. And yet there was this gap when it came to actually being in union
yeah,
and being able to polarize my partner to a very large degree. But when the trauma responses would happen or attachment, my own attachment wounding would start coming up, I would feel completely helpless,
yeah,
powerless, and regressed into a very young place that polarity couldn't help me in.
yeah. Yeah, I really resonate with that. I see myself as a little bit more on the anxious side of the spectrum, and I know I have covered up that anxiety with like being the good feminine, and when actually my wounds were triggered or I was feeling unsafe or quote unquote needy or whatever, I would try to polarize my way out of it. Just like, okay, I'm just going to be this most feminine thing ever. And then that should heal everything, right? That should make everything better again. Then he's going to show up for me the way I need him to. And it backfires. And my current partner famously is not a fan of polarity because he feels that we're missing this piece. Because he's like, at a certain point, we are two humans with two inner childs that
Mm-hmm.
are that have hooked into each other. And we can't polarize our way out of that.
Yeah, and what that is essentially is self abandonment, fawning, and manipulation, which is not coming from a 34-year-old woman who's using the tool of polarity to deepen her partnership.
Yeah.
It's actually leveraging this 12-year-old terror to
Yeah.
try and get love in a way that's actually not discerning or adult or true.
Yeah. 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 You're so right. So, can you share a little bit about whatever you want to share about this, but your own journey in the past months of actually now also incorporating that inner child healing, that trauma healing? What has shifted for you? Because I know there have been some big shifts for you, but what have you noticed is shifting? What have you noticed you're feeling different about relationships?
Mm-hmm. I think it's very often overlooked that who we are when no one is watching and who we are in our alone time
Hmm.
is one of the truest versions of who we actually are.
Mm.
And if we're really honest, because no one sees that but us and God,
Mm-hmm.
most of us in our alone time are filled with self judgment, self
Mm-hmm.
hatred,
Mm-hmm.
self rejection, self neglect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the way we talk to ourselves, it's in the way we feed ourselves, it's in the way we move throughout our own home, it's in the way that we repress, we numb, it's in the
Yeah.
way that we relate with the parts of ourselves that are exiled. And what I've had to really come to realize is I am who I am in relationship. In my alone time, that is who I'm bringing to the table. We can put on a
Oof.
mask for so long, we can put on a costume for so long, which is what, the misuse of polarity is. It's a mask, it's a costume, it's an archetype that's unsustainable. If at the core of us, our core transmission, beyond all the layers, beyond all the skills, is self hatred and self rejection, when
Mm.
all of that gets stripped away and we're in a regressed place, that's where we're going to be relating from.
Mm. Mm. Just
And
letting that
so
sink
for
in.
me, it's just been like, no, this work is like the part that no one sees for me. When no one is looking and the blinds close and the doors close,
Mm.
who am I with myself? Because if what I create in my alone time is rich and it is centered and it is loving, then when there's a rupture with my future partner, I'm
Mm.
not going to be so afraid to lose them. And this is the crucial piece I see for women in
Mm.
relationships, different I see for men, is that we have to know that we are the love, and that if we lose the external mirroring of that love, we are going to be okay.
Mm. This is so beautiful, Courtney. This is so beautiful. Yeah. You really, I think what you're speaking of is really this true self partnering. And I always get a bit tripped up when people say, like, oh, you need to love yourself first before another person can love you. I don't know if I fully believe that, but I do see this of like, am I my own partner also when I'm having a bad day and I don't like myself and, I don't want to take care of myself or I'm beating myself up over XYZ? Who am I then to me? Or do I need to rely on another person to bring love into my life?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I came to realize really powerfully is that I have been looking to men to be God, to
Mm.
be this unconditional, perfect father love that does not waver. And this is what I see now in the marketing. And I'm like, whoa, I see through it is, in this perfect relationship, she will be perfectly feminine and he will be perfect. And basically, we will interact with each other as God and goddess. And it's like, sure, that's one half of the coin, but we are human, we are flesh. And
Yeah.
so when I want a man to be God, I have actually forsaken my own spirituality because he
Oh,
is flesh, he is wound, he is
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And when I worship the man, i.e., put all of my energy, all of my obsession, all of my complaint, all of my energy into him, it's misplaced worship. Like where my worship should be is to this heart and to this God that
Mm.
is actually unconditional and unwavering. And then from that place, I can meet the flesh, which is what he actually is,
Yeah.
with that divine part of me, which then evokes that divine part of him.
I'm like speechless. This is so good. Damn, girl. Oof, oof, oof. This is really good. My whole body got warm. Oh, this is so beautiful. Yeah, you're right. You're right. We make our men God, and then we are so upset and disappointed, and we have so much complaint and judgment when they are not God. When they don't give us that unconditional, unwavering love, when they don't use words of affirmation, which is my main complaint, right? I was like, they don't speak to me lovingly enough, blah blah blah. Um, because we want that, we need that source of love from our men.
Mm-hmm.
When we forget there is a God and there is a self, from whom that love is always there.
Yeah.
Can you share a bit about like, because this all sounds really beautiful, and I'm sure people listening to this right now are like, whoa, amazing, great. Now what? Like, okay, my childhood shit comes up, you know, mine does too. Everybody's does. Um, how do we do that self-partnering? How do we go? What's like a really, what have you like, what's a skill or what's something that you've really noticed has helped you in this more trauma work with yourself, with this inner child healing with yourself?
Mhm. The first thing for me is like really admitting how judgmental and abusive I am with the parts of me I don't like and the parts of me that I have been victimized by, like the desperate part, the obsessive part, the boy crazy part, the
Right.
part that can't stop thinking about a man, the part that, and judging these parts as weak and young and pathetic and just trying to get rid, even as a coach of 8 years, trying to get rid of these parts of myself so that I can be worthy, so that I can be desirable, so that I can be an adult. And it just doesn't work like that. Every single part that I judge is me.
Mm,
It's all me, and it's all not going anywhere. And when we reach for other, it's
mm,
simply because we're trying to get away from these parts of ourself.
mm,
And we think, and it's true, because in the beginning of the love phase, all this oxytocin is dripping, and
mm.
they are able to come in and fill all of these holes within ourselves that are not being filled by source or our own love. So it is this temporary pause of the pain
Right.
of our own exile. And so then we think, oh, that must be it. It must be partnership. That must be the answer. But really, it's just a physiological hormonal cascade that is a diversion from the answer. And the answer is the parts that we hate the most, we have to go in and feel those parts and love those parts. And at first, I couldn't even feel compassion because I hadn't cultivated it. This is
Mm,
something I really want to tell people is like compassion is like one of the, I was talking to my friend Jenny Muir this morning, and she said compassion is one of the highest skills of humanity. Like it's
mm.
not something like that's just like go shut down with the part that you feel pathetic and give it compassion. Like that is something that is going to come from you really, 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 really wanting to heal
Yeah.
and going in and feeling that pain, because it is, and I know you know this, Sophie, feeling these parts is excruciating
Yeah.
and required. Excruciating and required.
Well, actually, I think what is really hard, what I've noticed myself, especially with the work that you and I've been part of lately. Um, so just as a side note, Courtney and I have been part of Zach Ruda's world where we're learning a lot about feminine communication and feeling our feels. And I mean, I've been in the coaching world and in the self-development world for a very long time. I think I know how to feel my feels, right? Actually, I don't. Very often I don't, because I notice because of that work, because what Zach teaches us quite strictly is there no judgment, no blame, none of that, which really comes in very subtly sometimes, and it's been an incredible year just in finding all the moments where I'm judging, I'm blaming, I've got all of that stuff, but to pick the or to find to catch the moments where I'm trying to do something outside of myself and then to actually go in and feel it. So I might feel
Mm-hmm.
very righteously that I think my man has failed me somehow or hasn't done something well enough or whatever, judgment. And to then actually go into the feeling of like, oh, so what do I actually feel? I know I'm angry at him. Okay, but what do I actually feel? Oh, I feel lonely. Okay, can I allow loneliness to be felt? That's hard because
So hard.
we're so trained to have a reaction on the feeling, to do
Mm-hmm.
something about it, to have an action on it. to tell your man he should be better, or to withdraw, which is an action also, right? But to have an action to him towards it
Mm-hmm.
versus, okay, what if he's not in the room? What if I can't speak to him? What if I really can't yell a bit in my head either? And just
Mm-hmm.
have to sit with my feelings. I thought really when I got into this work, I thought I know how to feel my feelings. I'm coming back from that completely. I know how to act on my feelings, but to
Mm-hmm.
actually sit with them, like, okay, loneliness. What does that feel like? Can I actually be with loneliness? And exactly what you say, can I have compassion for the loneliness instead of thinking I shouldn't be lonely? I should
Yeah.
be. He's a great man. What are you talking about? Whatever, right?
Get rid of this loneliness.
Yeah, I don't want to feel it. This is uncomfortable, or I'm bad at feeling it, or whatever. All these layers on top. Just actually being with a sense is. I had no idea that through all this polarity work, I would get back to the basics, but damn, I'm back at the basics.
Fuck yeah, girl. Can I say that word on your podcast?
What did you say?
I said that.
That's okay. You can say the word.
Yeah, so what you're talking about, and like this is the thing with like listening to a podcast and listening to us speak, and it's inspiring, and I hope it is inspiring for people. And what is the skill of what you're talking about is tolerating,
Yes,
right?
having
You're
the capacity.
tolerating
Yeah.
your loneliness.
Yes.
And where we go back to with trauma
Hmm.
is, do you know how old you felt when you felt that loneliness?
5, 6. Yeah.
5 or 6, right? So for a 5 or 6 year old, it like our nervous systems actually cannot tolerate it.
Right.
We physically cannot tolerate that level of loneliness, which is why we get in our psyches stuck in time.
Mm.
And so then we're in a conversation with our man or our friend, we regress to 5 because that place that's stuck in time is trying to heal through us in that moment.
Yeah.
But what's required of us, if we just look at it from a more physiological neuroscience perspective, is that we have to not just know this stuff, we actually have to train our nervous system,
Mm.
which is there's so many different things happening at once because on the psychic level at 5 we think if I feel this loneliness I will die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what's
Yeah.
happening at the psychic level when your
Yeah.
boyfriend does this. You feel reactive. Why can't I sit this with
Yeah.
this? And this is where the compassion comes in. It's because you think you'll die if you feel it.
Yeah.
You're actually battling with a survival part that's like, Sophie, you're asking me to sit with this, but this will be the end of our life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that is a heroic job to look at
Mm.
that part. Like, I know you think this will be the end for you, and I'm
Mm.
going to hold you through these sensations.
Yeah. 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 You're so right. I saw you write somewhere, and it's really interesting because I saw you speak about actually that all of this work is resulting in you having a stronger inner man.
Mhm.
And that actually through the trauma work we cultivate our inner man. And I many years ago I created a program where I worked with the inner dude because I had a
Mm.
feeling like if we don't have a healthy inner dude, we need our outside man to be something, and we demand him to be that because we don't have it inside ourselves. And so actually we do need to work a little bit on this inner masculine, on an inner erectness that has got us, that has got our inner child. And I'm super curious of what your experience in that has been of like, because I could feel it on you. I could feel a shift on you. I could feel that energy in you. Do you experience it like that too?
Mm. Let me check. Mm. Yeah, I guess it does have a masculine quality to it because what I would call it is is knowing my worth and
Yeah.
value
Yeah.
and being uncompromising in that worth and value no matter what it requires me to feel. But from the masculine energy perspective, yes, that does mean like of course, you know how we get tested, right, when we level up. So all the exes are coming back with
Oh, so
all of like
interesting.
with all of the yummy bids for makeout sessions and love making and things. My feminine just literally is the most delicious place in the world for me
Yeah.
is erotic.
Yeah.
And in the past, I have not been strong enough to say no
Mm.
to these bids for connection. And after climbing out of a pit of literal hell in
Yeah.
this last experience that I had, it is like him being like, and we're done.
Mm.
And sure, and of course, my feminine is like, but she can just sleep with her ex and nothing happens to her, and it just would be one time, and it would be so nourishing for my heart. Or we were together for 8 years, we know each other's body, or like all of the bargaining she does that like I've relented to in the past because my self-worth was lower.
Yeah.
He's now like, I hear you, my love. I know how deep that
Mm.
yearning goes for you. It is so yummy. It is so
Mm.
yummy.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
let's here's some paintbrushes and a paint set. Draw me something beautiful.
Mm. I love this. You're gonna do sounds delicious. Can you tell me more about self-worth? Because I've been exploring that topic for a bit now, and every time I feel like I've figured out what it is, it's so I understand it conceptually, but it's so hard to feel it. What is self-worth? What is that?
Well, first, can I know what you've come up with?
Okay, so I before I got into the polarity world, I would say that I thought I was like this woman that had like amazing standards, and I was so like I thought I was a queen and whatever, and I demanded to be treated well by every man, and I thought that was what self-worth was, and of course the men didn't respond very well to it, which was the first sign that something is off. And right, like when the men around you are all like, no, that's unattractive, then you know something's off. But, and then for the past years, I've thought I've had a lot of self-worth in me. But I doubt that now because I actually think self-worth is a very, we like to tell ourselves we have that. We like to tell
Mm,
ourselves that we've got that. But actually, I know very few
mm,
people who really truly do. And the example that you just shared of like actually saying no and
mhm,
actually having a boundary somewhere, a true boundary, not a manipulative boundary, like a true boundary. And so from where I am now in my self-worth is somebody else wrote this actually in our group, but they said something like, um, I love myself and nothing you can do can take any of that love away. You can only add
mhm,
to that, but there's literally nothing you can take away.
mm,
So you can say that I'm ridiculous or that I'm emotional or that I am crazy, but that takes away love and that's not going to happen.
mhm, mhm,
That's just
mhm,
you. That's just you in your own journey. But that's not me.
mm, mhm. Yeah,
And I
I love
felt that
that.
one. I felt that one. I was like, yeah, I can see that of like actually upholding love for yourself.
Mm,
And nobody can actually touch that.
mm. All right, let's get a little existential here.
Yummy.
Um, so where I've come to in the last year, but especially the last 6 months, is that my self worth comes from God.
Hmm.
And I know you have such a gooey relationship with God, and it's very hip to talk about God. And I love that. I'd rather it be hip than not at all. And it's in our alone time that that
Yeah.
claim is tested. Like, I talked about God before, but God was not my first love.
Hmm.
Men were my first love. Money was my first love. How do I know this? Look at my behaviors. Look at where I spend my time. Look at where I spend my energy. God was like third or fourth on the rung.
Yeah.
And in this last huge ego death, I decided, no, I'm going to mean it, and no one else needs to know it. I know it because of how I spend my alone time, that God is and forever will be my first love.
Mm.
And in that, every morning, and like I sit and I just weep every morning because the love is so powerful and so strong, and it's not me. It's
Mm.
not me that's loving me. I know my, small C Courtney love, and it's sweet and it's beautiful and it's pink and it's gooey, but it's not this love. And
No.
every time I hit my knees, I just immediately this source love that starts to swarm me when I'm like, God, replace my heart with your heart, replace my eyes with your eyes, my ears with your eyes. I want to be a hollow bone.
Mm.
I want that.
Mm.
Um, I feel my worth through something that is so much bigger than me.
Mm.
And that's how I come to know it. And anytime I drift, or I can feel my power fading, I can feel my neurosis come online, I can feel
Mm.
the desire to get compelled into drama, or trauma bond, or triangulation, or blame, or judgment, or any of that, I call on the spirit again. I'm like, I'm throwing this at your feet, God. Like what I want to do to be worthy, i.e., what my ego wants to prove to the world,
Mm.
makes me look valuable, versus who I am to you, which is inherently good and inherently perfect and inherently, which I think your client was saying,
Mm.
lovable, no matter how many people, quote unquote, reject me, how many people, quote unquote, don't choose me. When I touch into that viscerally,
Yeah.
not conceptually, that is where my worth lies. And that is where I make decisions that hold me in in unconditional safety, but it's not me. I wonder if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Oh my God, that makes so much sense. I love this idea of like be my speak like be my eyes, let me be a hollow bone for that God love. Because then you look not just at the outside world differently, but you look at yourself differently.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you see all your own pain and suffering and body and all of that through the eyes of God, that's a very different experience than you trying to love yourself really hard.
Yeah, so hard. Oh, yeah.
Working so hard at loving myself. Yeah, and that's not
Force.
working. Yeah, so I love what you just shared. I think that's a really beautiful one. How do you how do you look at men now?
Hmm. 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 I wanted to answer this as the second part to your question of, what is worth?
Yeah.
And I'm noticing that I think when people really start to like really move the needle in their lives, like, move to Tony Robbins level of consciousness, or like, the ones that we can just tell are embodying something
Yeah.
truly divine.
Yeah.
Um, every single trigger is an opportunity to look at ourselves,
Mm.
not to gaslight ourselves,
Mm.
not to fawn. No,
Mm.
no, like truly. Because whether it's our man or our best friend, whatever we're like, this thing in you is a character defect, or this
Mhm.
thing in you is fundamentally wrong, that is 100% the thing that we have exiled within. And it takes a strong ass person, and a person who is hell bent on becoming powerful, to go, I'm not going out, I'm going in. Like, I think you're a sneaky liar. I'm going to go inside and find the sneaky liar in me and recklessly love and understand that sneaky liar. And then it's wild. Then all of a sudden, there's not a charge anymore. It's not the same. And that's the worth too. It's not needing someone else to change their behavior, the way they relate to us, or their character. We don't need anything to change about them
Mhm.
anymore,
Mhm.
because they're no longer triggering the mirror of self rejection within us. I forgot your last question, but I mean,
Can I ask a different question?
yeah.
Because I think this
Mhm.
is a really, really important point. I love that. I love what you're saying. I think it's really powerful, and everybody listening, I just urge you to let that sink in of how wise this actually is. I notice the fighter in me has a thing of like, okay, yes. So we do all that inner work so that we see that every trigger is something in us, and we nourish that piece, we take care of that piece. But where does the piece come in of self-worth and standards? You know, when we really, because I will own that there's a wounded piece in me that's like, but we should stand up for ourselves, right?
Mhm.
So where, how do you see that? If like, because I fully feel what you're talking about, and you know, where does the standard or the boundary come in, or what can you share? Do you understand what I'm asking? I might be a bit fluffy. Okay,
I think so.
okay, okay.
Let's see. Let's see if I do. So Nima, who you had on your
Yes,
podcast,
I love him.
I'm also in his work, love
Yeah.
him. And he talks about any real rupture is almost always coming from um, two people's values not aligning.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all little narcissists. So we just have to like own it and admit it. And the narcissistic part of us goes, your values should be my values.
Right.
My
Yes.
values are more significant than your values,
Yeah.
right? You watch Netflix all day. I do personal development. I'm better. And it's like, how could that possibly be?
Right.
And so what I hear you saying is, well, what happens when someone violates my values?
Yes.
And so I think that's the first step is going, wow, it's becoming clear
Mm-hmm.
that our values are not aligned. So I have a choice here. Do I want to be in a relationship with someone whose values aren't aligned with mine? Or
Mm-hmm.
do I want to do my inner work to get to a place of lovingly saying, our values are not aligned and I
Mm-hmm.
love you.
Yeah.
And I no longer can relate in this way anymore because it's not supporting my expansion and growth in my life.
Right. Right. Just to give an example, because let's say, let me just think of an example. Let's say your
Mm-hmm.
partner is not a texter. They don't message a lot. They're not very present on in like technical or like communication in that way. And it is a need you have. It is a value maybe you have. Maybe you value that you're super present and loving and communicative as you WhatsApp with your friends, and your partner doesn't do that, and it triggers you. It triggers you. You feel unseen. You feel sad. You feel lonely. You feel not connected to. Um, and you work through some of those triggers. You work through some of that inner child work of what's coming up there. But this is a person you want to be with. So is that where you're saying if like either either there's an acceptance that there's a difference in values because one person doesn't care maybe so much about communicating over WhatsApp and the other person does, or you say actually this is so core to my being and so core to my love language and my how I perceive love. This is not for me.
Yeah. And if I was going to get really radical,
Yeah,
which
go
I
for
will,
it.
if someone not texting you
Yeah.
would have you in the relationship, I would go as far to say you were in your childhood trauma.
Oh, tell me more. Okay, now it's getting juicy. Tell me.
Now, it'd be a totally different situation if you don't hear from your partner for weeks. It's not
Right,
you're
right.
not you're not
That's
in
not
a
what I mean.
relationship.
That's not what I mean.
But if you have something so specific,
Mm-hmm.
I have to have my need be met through texting. And if it is not texting, then that is something that is still unresolved inside of you from your childhood. And I
Okay, so
guarantee
tell me the difference
if you,
between that and a value.
right? All right, let me feel.
This is juicy.
Okay, so what is the need underneath the texting?
I could imagine it being a need for connection, a need for
Great,
togetherness. Yeah.
great. So that is such That makes so much sense as a value in relationship, togetherness. So the first thing I would do is I would ask my partner, how do you value togetherness and connection?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And they might say, I value it in person, I value it in holding hands, I value it in sex,
Yeah.
I value it in deep conversations.
Right. Right.
There is something specific from the texting, right? If we picked it apart, we picked all the nuance apart. Like texting, for example, is like such immediate. There's a quickness to it. There's
Mm-hmm.
like a constancy to it, and to me that feels really young. Like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where's daddy? Is daddy right there? Daddy's there. Okay, okay, daddy's there. I'm safe. Daddy's there. Daddy's there. Daddy's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I would imagine if someone was going through this, they had that trauma of needing parent at some probably early adolescent point,
Right.
needing parent and parent not being there and trying to heal that through this texting
Right.
rather than as an adult being like, cool. So the way that my partner values togetherness and connection, which is a value I have too, is through sex or is through deep conversation. Does that work for me? Yeah, it works for me. Okay, problem kind of gets solved when we resolve the underlying childhood pieces.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
charge happens from that, yeah, that little girl frozen in time.
Yeah. Yeah. I fully agree with you. I, to be transparent, so I actually was the person that was a terrible communicator over texting. And in the beginning of our connection, my partner, he was like, it was kind of hard, because he would just like, I would send you like love notes, and you would just be like, okay, see you soon. And I had no awareness of this. I wasn't being like intentionally short or didn't want to speak to him. It hadn't registered in me that I wasn't communicating at all. And he's like, and I worked through it in the beginning. I worked through it in the beginning because it was triggering something in me. I thought, I'm pouring my heart out. She's not giving anything back. She must not like me. When there was truly none of that happening inside of me, I literally had a different way. I cared about when we're going out for dinner, that we're looking each other in the eyes and we're talking and we're communicating and we're connected, and that's where it mattered for me. And he did it. He speaks about it now, but he did that work by himself, and he communicated it a little bit, of course, but he just works through that trigger in himself, and it's not an issue anymore. It's not an issue for either of us. I'm just somebody who doesn't I don't communicate very much in while texting, and it's okay. And
Right.
it's
It's
okay.
okay. But if we had a more avoidant trending parent,
Yeah.
then any sign of avoidance from
Yeah.
partnership is going to get activated.
Yeah.
Because really, if we look under the hood, what we're trying to do in partnership is heal our broken relationships with our broken psychic relationships with our parents.
Yes. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't get out of this. So it's
Yeah.
like we can either do this consciously or we can do this unconsciously,
Do you think every relationship has that?
without a doubt, 100%.
Yeah.
No
Because
deviation.
I think a lot of people shame themselves for their relationship having some trauma bond element. I know I've shamed myself for that too, but I agree with you. I don't know any relationship that is devoid of this.
No, that's the whole point. And like that's
Yeah.
the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Now, like before I also would feel shame, and now I think it's gorgeous. I
Mm,
think it's art. If
mm,
both people come with the tools and the awareness and the desire to say, instead of getting activated and replicating the past, let's say you and I heal the future together.
mm, mm. That's so beautiful. I love that. As a final question, how do you look at polarity now? Because it feels like you're way more integrated, you're way more in touch with your inner child, with your own traumas, with your own stories. How do you look at polarity now? Because I could imagine that has shifted a bit. Does it still feel like something that's really part of your life? Because you are one of the most feminine persons I've ever met. But I'm curious, like, how does that exploration feel? How does that the role of polarity in your life feel now?
Question. It's my favorite hobby in the world, firstly. It sounds like, what's your favorite thing to do? Polarity is my favorite. So I recognize it as not like a lifestyle
Yeah,
anymore, or um, uh, an embodiment to strive for most of the time, and actually um, can be harmful if we're not actually being really discerning about when we use it, because it is so powerful.
right.
So that's the first thing, is that it's my favorite thing to do in a container.
Yeah.
And the second thing is to be used only after self partnering and secure relating, as the icing on the cupcake of union. Polarity is not partnership. Polarity is not union. Polarity is what keeps a healthy union passionate.
Yeah. I feel that polarity after self-partnering. Polarity after self-partnering. Yeah. And then it comes from like a healthy, or it comes from a non-manipulative place.
Yeah, it's playful, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's not like all the stakes, like, there's such high stakes. You better use polarity or right, or you're going to lose the love. It's like, no, I am the love. I know how to communicate from a place that is secure. And so why not spice it up a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. Can you, as okay, final question. What does secure relating feel like to you right now? Just so that people can taste it, because we all talk about it and I think it's a concept for a lot of people, but what does it actually feel like?
Mm. Well, I'm very much in my seat. So, like, to speak about it for those who are into the somatics here, I feel very much in my root. I feel very much in my
Mm-hmm.
belly. I feel weighted in my hips. Versus when I'm insecure, it's all upper chakra. It's upper
Yeah.
high heart, it's solar plexus, throat.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's a deep seatedness in my root, and there's a spaciousness in my day that's like, um, in the mundane, in the minutia, in the
Mm-hmm.
mediocre. There is a part of me present that is like a loving mama
Mm-hmm.
who's just right there
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, 20 times a day, shame will arise. If I'm paying attention, anger will arise. If I'm paying attention, grief will arise. If I'm paying attention. And for so much of my life, it's just been like, let's keep going. Let's keep moving. Don't look at that. That's not a big deal. Come on, we've got a workout to do, or whatever. We've got a friend to have. And look, and before, my life was really like, the things in my life were an escape plan.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, there is no escape plan. The plan is self intimacy at any given moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think you have some construction behind you, don't you?
I had to bargain with him to not do it for an hour, and
Perfect. He's like, 2 minutes. Okay, honey. Well, Sky Daddy has shared with us that we're on the time. Um, this was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, darling. Like for your wisdom and for your embodied, like it feels embodied, it feels congruent, it feels like who you really are, for having us all feel it rather than understand it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, if people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
muting myself soon to hear the sawing. You can just go to my Instagram, Courtney
I'll link
McNabb.
it.
Check me out. See
I'll
what
link
you want
that.
to see.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, my dear. I am so grateful we had this conversation and I hope it was useful for everybody listening. There is a little question box on the Spotify podcast below to share what your main light bulb was from today's episode. We'd love to hear what you're taking from this, what's landing, what's resonating, what's awakening. We love feeling you, and feel free to send us also a DM with what has landed. Okay, thank you so much for being here, Courtney.
So much gratitude and appreciation for you.
Thank
Thank you.
you, honey.